Hi guys, it's me again. I know I typically only do one read aloud a day, but we are so close to being done that I just wanted to record the last few chapters for you guys. Remember, if you have watched all the videos and you've listened to the whole story, you can take the reading counts quiz for it. So we have 4 more chapters and then we are done with the book. We are starting with chapter 49, What Do You Want, Miggery Sow? Again, reader, we must go backward before we go forward. We must consider for a moment what had occurred with the rat and the serving girl and the princess down in the dungeon before Despereaux made his way to them. What happened was this. Roscuro led the Pea and Mig deep into the dungeon to a hidden chamber, and there he directed Mig to put the princess in chains. "Gore," said Mig, "she's going to have a hard time learning her lessons if she's all chained up like." "Do as I say," said Roscuro. "Maybe," said Mig, "before I lock her up, her and me could switch outfits, so we could start in already with her being me and me being a princess." "Oh, yes," said Roscuro, "certainly, a wonderful idea, Miss Miggery. Princess, take off your crown and give it to the serving girl." The Pea sighed and took off her crown and handed it to Mig, and Mig put it on and slid immediately right down her small head and came to rest quite painfully on her poor, abused ears. "It's a biggish thing," she said, "and painful like." "Well, well," said Roscuro. "How do I look?" Mig asked, smiling at him. "Ridiculous," he said. "Laughable." Mig stood, blinking back tears. "You mean I don't look like a princess?" she said to the rat. "I mean," said Roscuro, "you will never look like a princess, no matter how big a crown you put on your tiny head. You look exactly like the fool you are and always will be. Now make yourself useful and chain the princess up. Dress-up time is over." Meg sniffed and wiped at her eyes and then bent to look at the pile of chains and locks on the floor. "And now, Princess," he said, "I'm afraid that the time for your truth has arrived. I will now tell you what your future holds. As you consign me to the darkness, so I consign you, too, to a life spent in this dungeon." Meg looked up. "Ain't she going upstairs to be a serving maid?" "No," said Roscuro. "Ain't I going to be a princess then?" "No," said Roscuro, "but I want to be a princess." "No one," said Roscuro, "cares what you want." As you know, reader, Miggery Sow had heard this sentiment expressed many times in her short life, but now, in the dungeon, it hit her full force. The rat was right. No one cared what she wanted. No one had ever cared, and perhaps, worst of all, no one would ever care. "I want," cried Mig. "Shh," said the princess. "Shut up," said the rat. "I want," sobbed Mig. "I want. "What do you want, Mig?" the princess said softly. "Eh?" shouted Mig. "What do you want, Miggery Sow?" the princess shouted. "Don't ask her that," said Roscuro. "Shut up, shut up." But it was too late. The words had been said. The question at last had been asked. The world stopped spinning and all of creation held its breath, waiting to hear what it was that Miggery Sow wanted. "I want," said Mig. "Yes," shouted the Pea. "I want my ma," cried Mig into the silent, waiting world. "I want my ma." "Oh," said the princess. She held out her hand to Mig. Mig took hold of it. "I want my mother too," said the princess softly, and she squeezed Mig's hand. "Stop it!" shouted Roscuro. "Chain her up! Chain her up!" "Gore," said Mig. "I ain't going to do it." "You can't make me do it. I got the knife, don't I?" She took the knife and held it up. "If you have any sense at all," said Roscuro, "and I heartily doubt that you do, you will not use that instrument on me. Without me, you will never find your way out of the dungeon, and you will starve to death here, or worse." "Gore," said Mig, "then lead us out now, or I will chop you up into little rat bits." "No," said Roscuro. "The princess shall stay here in the darkness, and you, Mig, will stay with her." "But I want to go upstairs," said Mig. "I'm afraid that we are stuck here, Mig," shouted the princess, "unless the rat has a change of heart and decides to lead us out." "There will be no changes of heart," said Roscuro. "None." "Gore," said Mig. She lowered the knife. And so the rat and the princess and the serving girl sat together in the dungeon. As outside the castle, the sun rose and moved through the sky and sank to the earth again, and night fell. They sat together until the candle had burned out and another one had to be lit. They sat together in the dungeon. They sat and sat. And reader, truthfully, they might be sitting there still if a mouse had not arrived. Chapter 50, in which the princess says his name. "Princess!" Despereaux shouted. "Princess, I have come to save you!" The Princess P heard her name. She looked up. "Despereaux?" she whispered, and then she shouted it. "Despereaux!" Reader, nothing is sweeter in this sad world than the sound of someone you love calling your name. Nothing. For Despereaux, the sound was worth everything. His lost tail, his trip to the dungeon, and back out of it, and back into it again. He ran toward the princess, but Roscuro, baring his teeth, blocked the mouse's way. The princess cried, "Oh no, Rat, please, don't hurt him. He is my friend." Mig said, "Don't worry, princess. I will save the Misi." She took the kitchen knife. She aimed to cut off the rat's head, but she missed her mark. "Whoopsie," said Miggery Sow. Chapter 51. What is that smell? "Ow!" screamed Roscuro. He turned to look at where his tail had been, and as he did, Despereaux drew his needle and placed the sharp tip of it right where the rat's heart should be. "Don't move," said Despereaux. "I will kill you." "Ha ha ha!" Botticelli laughed from the sidelines. "Exactly." He slapped his tail on the floor in approval. "Absolutely delightful. A mouse is going to kill a rat. Oh, all of this is much better than I anticipated. I love it when mice come to the dungeon." "Let me see," said the other rats, pushing and shoving. "Stand back," Botticelli told them, still laughing. "Let the mouse do his work." Despereaux held the trembling needle against Roscuro's heart. The mouse knew that as a knight it was his duty to protect the princess. But would killing the rat really make the darkness go away? Despereaux bowed his head ever so slightly, and as he did, his whiskers brushed against the rat's nose. Roscuro sniffed. "What is that smell?" he asked. "Mousy blood," shouted one rat. "Blood and bones," shouted another. "You're smelling tears," said Botticelli. "Tears and thwarted love." "Exactly," said Roscuro, "and yet there's something else." He sniffed again, and the smell of soup crashed through his soul like a great wave, bringing with it the memory of light, the chandelier, the music, the laughter, everything, all the things that were not, would never, could never be available to him as a rat. "Soup," moaned Roscuro, and he began to cry. "Boo!" shouted Botticelli. "Sss!" hissed the other rats. "Kill me," said Roscuro. He fell down before Despereaux. "It will never work. All I wanted was some light. That is why I brought the princess here, really, just for some beauty, some light of my own." "Please," shouted Botticelli, "do kill him. He is a miserable excuse for a rat." "No, Despereaux," said the princess, "don't kill him." Despereaux lowered his needle. He turned and looked at the pea. "Boo!" shouted Botticelli again. "Kill him! Kill him! All this goodness is making me sick. I've lost my appetite." "Gore!" shouted Mig, waving her knife. "I'll kill him." "No, wait," said the princess. "Roscuro," she said to the rat. "What?" he said. Tears were falling out of his eyes and creeping down his whiskers and dripping onto the dungeon floor. And then the princess took a deep breath and put a hand on her heart. I think, reader, that she was feeling the same thing that Despereaux had felt when he was faced with his father begging him for forgiveness. That is, P was aware suddenly of how fragile her heart was, how much darkness was inside it, fighting always with the light. She did not like the rat. She would never like the rat, but she knew what she must do to save her own heart. And so, here are the words that the princess spoke to her enemy. She said, "Roscuro, would you like some soup?" The rat sniffed. "Don't torment me," he said. "I promise you," said the princess, "that if you lead us out of here, I will get cook to make you some soup, and you can eat it in the banquet hall." "Speaking of eating," shouted one of the rats, "give us the mousie." "Yeah," shouted another, "hand over the mouse." "Who would want him now?" said Botticelli. "The flavor of him will be ruined. All that forgiveness and goodness, blech! I, for one, am leaving." "Soup in the banquet hall?" Roscuro asked the princess. "Yes," said the pea. "Really?" "Truly, I promise." "Gore!" shouted Mig. "Soup is illegal." "But soup is good," said Despereaux. "Yes," said the pea, "isn't it?" The princess bent down before the mouse. "You are my knight," she said to him with the shining needle, "and I am so glad that you found me. Let's go upstairs. Let's eat some soup." And reader, they did. Chapter 52. This is our last chapter. It's called Happily Ever After. But the question you want answered, I know, is did they live happily ever after? Yes and no. What of Roscuro? Did he live happily ever after? Well, the Princess P gave him free access to the upstairs of the castle, and he was allowed to go back and forth from the darkness of the dungeon to the light of the upstairs. But alas, he never really belonged in either place. The sad fate, I am afraid, of those whose hearts break and then mend in crooked ways. But the rat, in seeking forgiveness, did manage to shed some small light, some happiness into another life. How? Roscuro, reader, told the princess about the prisoner who had once owned a red tablecloth, and the princess saw to it that the prisoner was released. And Roscuro led the man up out of the dungeon and to his daughter, Miggery-Sow. Mig, as you might have guessed, did not get to be a princess, but her father, to atone for what he had done, treated her like one for the rest of his days. And what of Despereaux? Did he live happily ever after? Well, he did not marry the princess, if that is what you mean by happily ever after. Even in a world as strange as this one, a mouse and a princess cannot marry. But reader, they can be friends, and they were. Together they had many adventures. Those adventures, however, are another story, and this story, I'm afraid, must now draw to a close. But before you leave, reader, imagine this. Imagine an adoring king and a glowing princess, a serving girl with a crown on her head, and a rat with a spoon on his, all gathered around a table in a banquet hall. In the middle of the table, there's a great kettle of soup. Sitting in the place of honor, right very next to the princess, is a very small mouse with big ears. And peeking out from behind a dusty velvet curtain, looking in amazement at the scene before them, are 4 other mice. "Mon Dieu, look, look," says Antoinette. He lives, and he seems such the happy mouse." "Forgiven," whispers Lester. "Cripes," said Furlough, "unbelievable." "Just so," says the Threadmaster Hovis, smiling. "Just so." And reader, it is just so, isn't it? The end. So there they are around the table, and then there's his family watching. So that is the end of the Tale of Despereaux. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to take the reading counts quiz, you may take the reading counts quiz on this. And I will start a new read aloud soon. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye.